Having looked at relational and logical operators, we have the building blocks in place to begin looking at how we make decisions in our C# code. We do that with the if statement. Let me begin by showing you the syntax of the if statement before we look at some examples. And I'll do that in comments up above the program. The if statement begins with if, followed by a relational expression. If the relational expression is true, then the statements that we want to perform or be evaluated are placed right underneath the statement, like so. That's an example of the simplest if you can write. There are more complex versions, but in this lesson we're going to look at just the simplest if. The statements inside the block are only performed if the relational expression is true. So let's look at an example. We'll start out with some variables, and we'll work just with integers here. So we'll have salary and hours worked. Then we might prompt the user to enter their salary, and then a console read line. And then we might prompt the user to enter their hours worked, another console read line. Then we might say if hours worked is less than or equal to 40, let's add another variable here. Gross pay is equal to salary times hours worked. Now notice I didn't put statement block, and I probably should, so let's go back. It actually works without it, but I don't want to introduce that quite yet. So we'll put that back in. Then we can say if hours worked is greater than 40, gross pay is equal to salary times 40 plus salary times 1.5 times hours worked minus 40. The error we're getting is because gross pay could be a floating point number here, so let's just change that real quick. Again, rather than edit out my errors, I'm just going to work through them with you so that you can see how to fix these errors when they crop up in your programs, which they will. Alright, so then we close off this block. And then we can do a console write line. Gross pay is plus gross pay. And then a console read key right here. And yes, I see the error. Okay, here's the problem here. Notice that gross pay is declared but not assigned a value. The values are assigned to it, possibly here and possibly here, but the compiler can't say for sure in which if statement value is going to be assigned. So what we need to do is we need to go ahead and initialize it to a value 0.0, and that clears the error. We didn't get it for salary and hours worked because very clearly we have an assignment statement here and an assignment statement here that don't depend on if statements for their values to be assigned. But when we got to gross pay here, the compiler could not be sure if an assignment was made in this if block or in this if block or at all. So that's why we had the error, and that's why we needed to go back and initialize it when we declared it. Now let's run the program. So we'll do some even numbers. 20, hours worked is 40, gross pay is 800. All right, let's run it again. 20, hours worked is 45, and gross pay is 950. So what happens is, when we entered 40 for the hours worked, then this statement was executed because hours worked less than or equal to 40 is true. When we entered 45, hours worked less than or equal to 40 is false, so it skipped this statement, moved to the next if, and 45 is indeed greater than 40, so this statement was executed, and there we got the gross pay of 950 instead of 800, which we had when the salary was 20 and the hours worked was 40. So those are the basic mechanics of the if statement. There is, however, a better way to write this particular program using something called an if-else statement, and we're going to look at that in the next lesson.